Thanks a lot, Troy. All right. All right, so we're going to talk today about mobile homes and mobile home park investing. The two are completely tied together. So even if you say, oh, I just want to be in the park business, you still have to understand the homes. And even if you say, I don't want to do anything to do with mobile home parks, you ultimately will. Because if you get in the home part of it, people always end up in the park part. So most people start with homes, always end up park owners rather than just homeowners. So the two are completely tied together. So I'll give you a warning. First off, there's a lot of fake news about the industry. So I'm going to try and dispel a lot of those myths that you've heard. If you grew up in America and live in America, everything you see about mobile home parks is very negative, and I'm going to point out some of the inaccuracies in that today. So we'll start off with the history of the industry. We went through this a little bit on our little hour and a half conversations here the other night, but I'll try and point you in the right direction again on this. As I mentioned, on those sessions, the industry actually is very upscale in its original origins. So it never began as affordable housing. It became as the exact opposite. It was considered a luxury item for the wealthy initially, at least with people who are wealthy enough to own an automobile and then later own a trailer. It's been diced and spliced in many different ways. Architects, designers. Frank Lloyd Wright built a mobile home once called the Americana Usitonia, which they tour around America, seems like every decade or so. Raymond Lowery designed one. They designed some in Europe. This is one that was designed out of Europe. Looks like a spaceship. I think there's 7 of them left in the US. Kind of a collector's item. There's one along the Interstate 55 between St. Louis and Chicago that I see all the time. But the industry originally was something that was not supposed to be like single family. It was supposed to be different. So, today they make the mobile homes look a lot more like what a conventional home looks like with vinyl siding and shingled roofs. But the original intention was never to do that. And I don't even know at the end of the industry if they'll swing back to looking different again or not. Clayton Homes, when Warren Buffett bought it, they decided to go in a new direction. They tried to build some homes that looked really edgy and nothing like a normal home. But they didn't sell well, so they abandoned them. But you saw the shows of micro homes and other items, and you kind of think that maybe the future of the industry is that it won't look like a conventional home. I don't know where it will end up. I mean, I see those new 3D printing devices that can 3D print a home. You probably have seen those, and those would be very adaptable to a mobile home park because they have very small footprints. So no one's really sure where the industry is going to end, but it pretty much began as upscale luxury product. And so the reason why it's important to know that is, number one, it will help dispel some of the negative stigma on the industry. And the other is a lot of the parks we evaluate to buy, we find all these little items that make no sense in a world of affordable housing. Some of them have unusually large clubhouses and pools and areas that you would think, why in the world would you put that in something that just appeals to the poor? It makes no sense. Well, it's because it didn't originally. Another thing I'm hoping here when we show you some videos here in a moment is you'll come to realize what the average product looks like. Because unless you've looked at a lot of mobile home parks, because of the negative stigma, you probably think mobile home parks are just nasty, downscale hovels, but they really aren't. The average mobile home park looks just like a subdivision, only with much smaller homes on it, right? I mean, our typical home product is about 1,000 square feet and under. So for single family, that's pretty small. But they look just like subdivisions. So they don't look at all like you probably think, and at this point you probably haven't driven through enough to know what it really normally looks like anyway. This is what it looks like in most of our portfolio. So if this is when I say the words mobile home park or trailer park, if this is not what you're thinking, then you're wrong, because this is what the majority of them look like. Now, Colorado parks look a little different than the rest of America. So I brought some videos of some other states we have properties in, because Colorado is just one state, maybe the state you guys are in, but it's not the whole country. Your parks here, some of them look like this. You have a lot of parks in Colorado that have gravel roads, right? I mean, even some of the more expensive parks here have gravel roads. A lot of our parks here have gravel roads. It changes the complete appearance. Our typical park has paved roads, concrete curb, often concrete sidewalk, concrete driving pads, and that's the industry norm. But if this is not what you think of, then you're pretty much mistaken. Now, the media has done a really good job of ruining everyone's opinion of the industry. Just like the Wizard of Oz ruined everyone's opinion on tornadoes in Kansas, even though that's not actually true either. You have the ability in Hollywood and in the media to kind of skew people's thoughts repetitively if you hit them up enough times with the wrong portrayal. And that's what's happened in this industry. And I was no different. When I first bought my original attitude towards mobile home parks was that they were dangerous and scary. So when I bought my first park, the very first thing I did was I ran down and got the concealed handgun license. That was, to me, the most important thing I could humanly do. So that was a big part of my diligence was I had to call around and find out when can I get my concealed handgun license class, what do I have to do? But that's so I was as guilty as anybody. I knew nothing of the industry, but my parents had always told me that trailer parks were nasty and gross and horrible and never go in one. And so that was my opinion of the industry. It could not have been any more bleak. So this is what the media normally shows you trailer parks look like. This is out of the movie 8 Mile, starring the rapper Eminem, who lived in mobile home parks in his youth until he got famous. And if you've seen the movie, right, I mean, the trailer park is nothing but a bunch of guys who and men and women who basically get drunk every day. Sometimes they're drunk throughout the entire day, and basically get in fights, and beat their spouse, beat their kid, beat their dog, beat each other, beat up the mobile home. So that's the general theory, but this is the actual 8 Mile where Eminem grew up. So what happened here? All right, I think maybe they were trying to create an image of him that he's a hardcore rapper because this looks nothing like this. And that's Eminem's park. That's A&S Mobile Home Park on Schuler Boulevard in Detroit. And as you can see, that hardly looks like the edgy, nasty, let's all get drunk and beat up each other environment that the movie portrayed. So over and over again, it's been compelling for Hollywood to try and make the industry look like something it's not and sour everybody on it. But just wanted to start off by showing you that. Okay, and so if you talk about fake news going on in America, I mean, you can't get much more fake than the mobile home park story because it's all pretty much been made up. So here's some truth about the industry to start off with. Number one, the supply is completely limited. There are only 44,000 mobile home parks in the U.S., and the number goes down a little bit every year. So name another real estate segment that has no additional supply possible. Go, anyone? That's right, you can't, because there aren't any. They even can still build landfill. We're the only segment that has been completely shut down. So we are basically a shrinking product. We're like some kind of endangered species, although we're not in any way endangered. There's 44,000 of the species still left. But every year they build roughly about 10 new parks in the US. We tear down typically, in any given year, 20 to 50 parks, right? I'm sorry? There's only 10 new ones built per year in the US. Out of the 10 new ones that are built, probably 8 of the 10 go into bankruptcy. It's just about impossible. I'll give you an example. There's a big industrial developer in Dallas called Jackson Shaw. They build giant industrial buildings. They've been around for decades. They thought they would build mobile home parks because they build all kinds of junk. So they found some land north of Fort Worth, and they built a giant private water and sewer system, cost them millions of dollars to build. And they did all kinds of crazy stuff. They even put in-ground sound throughout the entire park, which I didn't understand that idea at all, because people all don't like the same music. So why would you even do that? But they were trying to come up with ideas that would make them different, right? So I guess that would be one of their amenities. We have sound throughout the property. So what happened is after 4 or 5 years in, they only had 10 customers. And it was a 400 space park. They probably needed at least 200 to break even. They kind of gave up and shut it down, and it later was redeveloped into starter homes, regular stick built. But why did they fail? Why did Jackson Shaw fail so bad? They failed so bad because the closest in permit they could get to Fort Worth was still about 30 miles out of Fort Worth. So no one wants to live 30 miles out of Fort Worth. It makes no sense. There's tons of housing in Fort Worth. Particularly if you need affordable housing and you're poor, you don't want to be driving your car 30 miles each way every day. It doesn't make any sense. So that's the problem. So basically, city government has pretty much stopped the industry, and we don't really see that ever changing. So I don't think like 10 years from now I'll be up here going, yeah, well, we're building 100 parks a year right now. They're not going to build any more parks. It's pretty much stuck where it is. So that's one attribute that's super compelling is simply the fact that there are no more. So, where I am in Missouri, I drive up I-55 to St. Louis. I see this really nice self-storage, right? They build it on the side of the highway, and, they advertise the rents, got an LED sign and stuff. And then a few months later, I see they build another self-storage next door to that. Yuck. So this guy's he's not even full. Now they've doubled the supply right across the street from him. The beauty of this industry is that doesn't happen. So you can buy a mobile home park, you can have the only mobile home park in South Beloit, Illinois, and you never have to worry about seeing in the newspaper the ability to a new mobile home park across the street from you. It also means you don't have to worry about it ever getting obsolete, right? It's not like a hotel where you've got, the AC suites and you're thinking, okay, wow, I'm doing great with my hotel. They build a newer, better, bigger Hyatt across the street, and then suddenly you're Class B or Class C and nobody wants you anymore. In our industry, you don't have to ever have those worries, so that's kind of a nice thing. Number two, the industry, because Hollywood's built that giant negative stigma, it just keeps everybody out of investing in the stuff. So, and again, I was absolutely no different when I bought my first park, which I didn't even really mean to buy. I only bought it because the guy made me a deal I couldn't refuse, so I bought it. But I could not have been more negative on the product. So, I literally refused to show up at the property until I had a loaded gun in my pocket. And I carried that loaded gun for first not quite a year, but I was always ready to, I'd practice at home whipping it out of my pocket. And I was just raring to go. But that isn't what the industry's about. But the negative stigma keeps the buyers away. But also, go ahead, if you have any questions, just go ahead and raise your hand any time here, because this is a small group. Yes?
If you don't mind,
yeah, let's talk about that. The mobile home park, and we've got some slides coming up on sewer lines, but most of your mobile home parks, I'm going to say 90% are in clay tile, right? And clay tile is a great product, invented by the Romans. Everyone's got it. I've got it. If it's not in your sewer, you probably got some flower pots made out of it. The only problem with the product is that the pipes don't fit together too tight, so you get what's called root intrusion. The roots grow into your pipes, and once they find that constant water source, they tell all their friends, and all the trees grow into your pipes, right? But the product still works pretty good until they get into your pipes enough that with hydraulic pressure they can cause cave-ins and such. What happened in that is we own 280 properties, and we have never replaced a sewer system. And I was talking to the guy at Sun Communities, which is bigger than we are recently. They own a little more than twice as many as we own, and they've never replaced a sewer system. And no one replaces their sewer system. Now you might say, well, why is that? Well, I think we're doing like Johnny Cash, one piece at a time. Every time a piece collapses, we put in new PVC on that segment. So if you really looked at any of the properties we own that we say are clay tile, probably maybe up to 50% clay tile, 50% PVC. But the weird ending is we actually looked at a property that we were really considering replacing the clay tile in, because when we were buying it, this was in an REO, when we're going to go to buy it, they have been rotor-rootering every other day for the past year. So that's a lot of rotor-rooter at $250 a whack. So we're thinking, well, we're finally going to have to replace a sewer system. So we put a camera in the sewer system to see what's going on, and all that's in there is just a gazillion roots. No cave-ins, just roots aplenty. It turned out what was going on is, since it was REO, the rotor-rooter company was ripping off the bank. So instead of they cut the roots out, since they knew the bank was so dumb that they'd pay them every time they went out, they would deliberately take everything off the rotor-rooter device and just push the clog down a little bit and then leave, knowing the manager for the bank would call them back, and that the bank was so stupid they would keep paying him the $250 over and over and over and over. So the guy that owned the Roto-Rooter knew he could get $250 like 3 times a week. So he's making like $750 a week off their own stupidity. We went in with a cutting device and cut all the roots out on the day we purchased it, and we've only been averaging 1 Roto-Rooter a year since then, right? But the reason I tell you that story is we bid to replace the pipes. So to replace the pipes in the park, typically what you do is you have to dig up and replace the pipe, right? But now there's a new thing called pipe bursting. Are you all familiar with pipe bursting at all? What you do is you dig a giant hole at one end of your sewer system and one at the other. And you insert a hydraulic rod that goes all the way through. And at the other end, you attach a new PVC pipe. It pulverizes your clay tile and pulls a new pipe through simultaneously. Right? When we bid to replace the sewer on that property, our bid was $300,000 conventionally, but our pipe bursting bid was only $100,000. So the pipe bursting is going to kind of remake line replacement, but I don't know if it really much matters because we just don't see a lot of sewer line replacement. You know, the thing about the sewers is, and we would acknowledge in some of our properties, we have different types of sewer line. In many cases, we may have gaps in the sewer line this big, right? But it doesn't cost us any money. See, water line replacement is more common in the industry because we pay for that. But there's no pressurization in sewer. We don't even know where the sewage goes. So it's possible some of our lines are all screwed up. But as long as our sewer is flowing out, we don't know when the problem is or do anything about it. But that's kind of it. But we rarely, well, we've never, but I mean, like, I don't actually know any owner, and we know thousands of owners. I don't know anyone who's ever actually replaced a sewer system. Not the whole system, maybe 100 feet sections, but not a whole system yet. Okay, low maintenance, again, mobile home parks at their purest, you just rent the land. Obviously in the mobile home section, untrue, unless you sell the home and carry the paper, and then they have to do their own repairs. But the best parks that we own are ones where we don't own any of the homes. All we do is rent the land, and it's so easy, it's crazy. We had a mobile home park we bought in Black River Falls, Wisconsin. So we flew out there, you know, drove the park for a day, bought the park. We sold it 3 years later, and we had never been there since we bought it. And you might say, well, that's freaking impossible. No, the deal with the park was when we went the first time out to the park, had a crusty old manager, a woman, probably about 75 years old, and she doesn't like to talk to people. And she said to us, if I bring all my rent in by the 1st and I don't cause any problems, can I not talk to you guys? We're like, sure. And we thought, that'll never happen. But that's pretty much how it was. She brought in her rent by the 1st. We never had any issues. We never went back out there again. You can't do that in apartments, right? It would just never happen. You couldn't have, I mean, maybe you could have a red house with one customer for 3 years and never go there. But it's just kind of weird. But literally, I mean, to buy a property, operate it for 3 years, and it's a pretty big property. It had about 60 lots in it. But they never, ever even visited again. Seems pretty crazy. But there was no reason to visit it because we got all our rent on time, no problems, no complaints. So I don't know if you can do that outside of mobile home parks. Triple net buildings, you can do it. But the low management is pretty crazy. If you talk to most people who own a park, and I know, Dave, you own a park, I mean, you know, most people spend roughly about 3 hours a week managing the park. Now, obviously, they have an on-site manager, but I know when I bought my first park, and I came out of the billboard industry, which was extremely management intensive, it blew my mind how little I had to do. Because all I did was I found a part-time bookkeeper. I found a stay-at-home housewife who was a CPA, and she was just I found her word of mouth from someone said, hey, if you need some bookkeeping for your mobile home park, look this person because they just handle a few accounts and they like simple stuff in their home, but they're not hardcore CPA. So I hired this woman, and basically what I did was I got the deposits. I had them sent to a PO box. And I would take them as a collective group down to her once a month, and I just give them all to her, and she would log in which lots they were and make the deposit. And then I would also write the checks, sign the checks with her. And we only did 10 checks a month. So literally I'd go out to her house and she'd have the little check pile and I would basically sign them and she'd stick them in the envelopes and then I'd put a stamp on them and I'd send them and I was done for the month. That was all I had to do. So it's a very low management style, low maintenance, low management style of running things. Yes?
Excuse me, you say she lived at the apartment?
No, she didn't. She lived in a real nice brick house. She was married.
Manager or?
No. She was just a bookkeeper. You do have to have on every property, I can tell you, because we tried it many different ways. You have to have a manager who lives on site. This business will not work with an off-site manager because all of the action is at nights and weekends. So 9 to 5, it happens at all. You don't even need anyone there 9 to 5. No one's hopefully home 9 to 5. You hope they're out working to earn your rent. But when they all come home at 5, that's when everything bad happens. That and the weekends. So if you don't live on site, you're just of no value to us. We've tried different formats. We've tried hiring someone who lives in the stick-built home, right by the park. Doesn't work because they can't come to the stick-built home at 3 in the morning on Saturday when the power goes out or the sewer stops. So it just doesn't work. So our mandate is every property has to have a live-in manager, and we pay them very little, $10 an hour plus free housing. It's the same exact compensation plan that self-storage uses. So we basically get the same kind of employee. We get retired couples, retired military people. We rarely get the young family on the go because young families on the go need more than what we pay, which is really not much. Yes? Yeah, they go on vacation. I mean, you can't chain them to their office. But when they go on vacation, our only rule is they can't go on vacation between the 1st and the 15th because that's when all the rent comes in. So, but other than that, yes, they can go on vacation. Now, if you go on vacation, though, you have to have a manager, designated manager buddy to be you while you're gone. So what they typically have is they'll have a neighbor or somebody else in the park, and they'll say, hey, I'm leaving town. Can you watch it for me till I get back? And we don't compensate that person. So typically it's something that they arrange with the neighbor, just like I do with my neighbor, to like feed my dog or something. But there's typically so little going on. I think all that person would technically do is call the person on their cell and ask them, what do I do if something should happen? There was another question. Yes?
You're saying $400 a week per man?
Well, no. Some of our properties pay as little as $100 a month cash plus free housing. It's $10 per lot per month plus free housing. And in most cases, they already live there and own their own home. So free housing is just lot rent. So many of our managers are only making total compensation $500 a month, $600 a month. Now you might say, well, why would you even do it then? That's not much. Well, that's because you're thinking like you. But if you're making like minimum wage, that's a big deal, right? If you're making like $8 an hour, and I'm going to pay you $600 a month, that's a lot of labor time. It's like it's almost 2 full weeks of your earnings. So you're like, okay, I'm on board with this program. Yes.
So free lot, but not a free house.
Well, it depends on the park, all right? Typically on the smaller parks, we only want people who are stakeholders in the business who own their own home to be manager. But let's say I have a larger park. Let's say I've got a 200 space park. Now that's too big for someone who lives in the park to handle. So now I have to do what's called import a manager in. So when I import a manager in, I have to provide them a house of some type. So typically we'll either use mom and pop's house as the manager's house. That's pretty common. Or sometimes we'll buy a repo home or just some home in inventory and we give them, that's the designated manager's house, even though it's a mobile home. But we don't have them buy a home. I mean, no one's going to work for you if the condition of employment is they have to buy a home, right? And in some cases, the home is a bigger part of the compensation than the cash. We have a manager in Muskogee, Oklahoma, mom and pop, which unfortunately it's inside the park, because if it wasn't, we would have sold it. But mom and pop in this case built like an Elvis-style giant brick executive mansion. It's not only that big, but it's about 4,000 square feet, has a 3-car attached garage. But the wild part is at the back of the house, he has an area that's about as big as this room. It was a complete recreation of the set of the show Cheers, which was popular when this guy was around. And so it's got the giant oak bar with the brass rail. It has all the beer taps. And then it's built like a restaurant. It has seating, little pods of seating. And it probably seats, I don't know how many people in there, 50 people, something like that. Well, for somebody who's been used to living like in a self-storage environment, like just some crappy cinder block apartment on top of a self-storage, to live in that is amazing. So what happens on that property is the bulk of the compensation is the home. We basically let you live in the home, and then we'll pay you like $1,000 a month cash, right? Whereas typically that park would pay like maybe $2,000 a month cash and free housing. The house is so amazing, people will work there just to live in the house. So as long as they can cover their utilities and some food and just live in the house, it's the highest anyone in their family tree has ever lived of all time. It's even got a bedroom with a fireplace at one end that's electrically started, so you can lay in bed and push a button and start the fireplace. And again, it's a total waste to be inside of the park. It should have been sectioned off and sold. And we really ourselves think it's just absolutely stupid. But the problem is when you built the house, rather than build it up at the front so I could subdivide it and sell it off, it's in the middle of the park. So I have no choice. So it'll always be the manager's house. Yes?
Two questions. Where do you find people that can go out and do some other side jobs?
Okay, well, let me go do the second question first. For the second question was basically another form of employment right besides the park, and the answer is absolutely. Except on the parks that are so large that we actually have to have someone there doing actually like a real manager. And normally that transition point is 100 lots. So if it's 100 lots and up, it has to be their full-time job. If it's under 100, we actually encourage them to go have a real job, a real life, separate from the park, and just be the warm body on nights and weekends, because there's nothing for them to do. So we don't want someone sitting there who has nothing to do, because when you have nothing to do and you're sitting there, bad things happen. Then you start fixing things that aren't even broken, you start repainting things that don't even need to be painted, or even worse, you start embezzling money or coming up with schemes to embezzle money because you have nothing else to do. We like one of our best managers is in Devils Lake, North Dakota. She is a teller at Wells Fargo, right? So every day from 9 to 5, she's a bank teller at Wells Fargo. And then she comes home and manages the park. And there's really nothing to manage. We don't own any homes in there, which is have the land. But she's our warm body in there on nights and weekends. The beauty of that deal is, number one, we have confidence in the fact that she's a teller at Wells Fargo, she's responsible. So that kind of helps us vet her out that she's a good person, because she couldn't be a teller if she was a criminal or something. And also it keeps her occupied, and we're just like a little supplement to her income. So going back to what was the first question again? Where do we find them? We find most of these people on Craigslist, believe it or not. We put our ads on Craigslist, wanted mobile home park manager, and you'd be shocked how many we get. Because this is a job you'd think, who would want that job? You'd be shocked how many people want that job. You got 10,000 people retiring per day in the US. It's the perfect job if you're retiring, right? Because now you're getting $1,200 a month on Social Security, and we're gonna pay you maybe 50% of what you're making on Social Security, and you get free housing. And also we find our best managers are mostly people who just like people, and they would do it for free. So if I can get someone who was a shoe salesman at Foley's, who's now retired and downsizing, that'll be a great manager, because they just like to talk to people. So they go around the park, kind of like those restaurants, the best restaurants, it seems, the manager goes around, how's your dinner tonight, how's it going? That kind of deal. So that manager will basically just walk around, how's it going, everything going okay? And it works out perfectly. And they'd almost do it for free. Yes?
Free golf cart?
We do not. We have some parks that have golf cart, okay? The problem with the golf cart is they break down, people abuse them, people steal them. So not all of them. Our bigger ones, we do provide golf cart. And we do it mostly for when they have to show homes. So people go to the office and they say, just jump on the golf cart, I'll show you what we got. And it makes it so much easier. So much easier to sell when you just have to ride on a golf cart. Yes? All employees. We have no independent contractors in our whole company. We have 700 employees. So those employees are nothing more than part-time maintenance men. but we still use them all as employees. They probably have in today's America is it's gigantically litigious, and if they're an employee, you're much safer than if they're an independent contractor. That way I know that they have all the insurances. We have EPLI insurance in case they do something stupid. But if they're independent contractors, they don't have that stuff. So we've converted everyone. In the old days, they were almost all independent contractors, but today, to be honest with you, if you talk to our insurance agent, your own employees are more dangerous today than your residents are. We have more suits today from employees than we do from residents. All the time we fire people and they suddenly sue us and claim we owe them thousands of hours of overtime. We had a guy sue us recently that we fired. He was a maintenance man. He filed a lawsuit claiming that we owed just this mountain of overtime. When we did the math, the overtime was more than 24 hours a day. He just wanted some quick money, so he filed this. And so obviously that was great because the whole case falls apart. But whether it's sex discrimination or just anything, your managers are the spookiest people on earth. So that's why we like to have them all as employees under all of our safeguards of insurance and workman's comp, everything else known to man. Yes? Yes, we do run background checks on the managers, mostly focusing on criminal, just to see what's going on. But I can tell you right now that you're going to find in the world of poor people, and again, it's not, many of our parks are super nice, but I think all of our residents have in common is most of them do not have high income. Like I've never met someone living in my park who is, for example, a doctor. I've never said, hi, what do you do? I'm a surgeon. Never happened. I have had a few, like, what do you do? I'm an engineer. Okay, well, that's unique. I've even had, what do you do? I'm an attorney. Okay, but probably not a very good attorney. But at any rate, when you get into people of lower incomes, they never have squeaky clean backgrounds. Okay, so all the time we're having to look at somebody's background. Let me give you a perfect example. Right, we had a property, and this property had lots of deferred maintenance in the form of water and sewer issues because mom and pop didn't want to put any money in. Right? And we knew that going in. And what this guy would do is he would fix his own water lines in the following way. If he had a water leak, he would dig down and he would take the water line and he would wrap rubber around it, and then he would wrap wire around it because he did not know how to fix plumbing. So picture that, right? I mean, kind of weird. So it's like if your yard hose was leaking and you just went around it 1,000 times with duct tape, didn't really fix it, and the water's still coming out both ends of the duct tape, right? But it's not shooting out now, but it's still, so we have a ton of that. So we have to have our dream manager for this property, he has to be able to dig. He won't be licensed as a plumber. That's way too expensive. We're never gonna get a licensed plumber. But the big part of plumbing is the digging. So we wanted a guy who could not only manage the park, but dig. It's a weird thing, so we put that on our Craigslist post. Ideal manager also must know how to dig or worked in the plumbing industry. So get all these resumes in, and on Craigslist, as you know, half the people are insane, right? So you know that going in. So half of them, people are just nuts. I'm a shaman, priestess, you're just like trash. They're just crazy. But then we get this one that says, yeah, I was a plumber's assistant for 5 years. So we're like, oh, man, this is the guy. So we get the guy, and then the guy tells us, well, there's something you should know before you run that criminal screening. And we said, what is that? I kind of just got out of prison. Well, how recently? Last month, right? So he'd been in prison for a decade for dealing drugs, right? We called up the insurance company, said, can I hire this guy? Because he's the only person that can dig and manage. And they said, well, he's supposed to be redeemed, went to prison, obviously hadn't done drugs in a decade, you'd think, because he's in prison. And so society says he's paid his dues, so I guess you can hire him, try him out. So we said to the guy, look, we're probably crazy to hire you because, as you know, no one hires a convicted felon. But I need a manager who can dig like a wild wildebeest. So if you can dig like a maniac, then you're hired. And that manager has done a phenomenal job because they know that they're unemployable, right? So he'll do anything. We've actually called the guy up and said, hey, we're looking at this other park that's 3 hours away. Can you drive over there and take some pictures? And he just doesn't even think, just jumps in the car and floors it because he's terrified that we would ever let him go because he's unemployable. The reason I tell you that story is we see that all the time because apparently out there for people who don't make lots of money, there's always a little bit of crime and things going on. So you have to be a little flexible. In other words, if you said, I won't hire anyone who's ever had a crime or this or that, you'll never be able to hire anybody, right? So, but that happens all the time. Okay, another item is we're the only form of real estate that I can think of other than medical buildings where the doctors buy their office space in a condo format, something like that, where our residents are actually stakeholders in the property. So really all of our residents who own their own home, it's like they're shareholders in the business model. We own the land, they own the homes. So it's kind of a nice fit because they're not straight renters, they actually do care what's going on. They do complain when the community goes down. Why? Because they own the homes. So we're kind of stuck with each other. So it's a different relationship than you have in, I think, pretty much any other kind of real estate I can think of. Next item, which is, but we're really all drawn to in the industry. I mean, somebody asked me the other day, like, what's the single biggest thing in the industry that would make you want to be in it? It's pretty much that everyone's trying to share in this giant one-time price adjustment in the lot rents. That's really what it's all about. So we're buying these properties banking on the fact we can probably double the rents over the next 5 years or so, right? And once that's over, it's not that much fun of an industry anymore, to be honest with you, right? So at some point, our industry becomes like apartments or things where you just raise it up CPI 3% a year, 5% a year. But the real big money is getting into it right before the price adjusts. It's like trying to buy a stock. It's at $10 a share, and you know it's going to be at $20 a share. But once it's at 20, maybe it's 5-year horizons, it goes to 22 or something. So the fact that rents are so cheap and there's so much potential to raise them, that's what attracts most people to it. That's what attracts us to buy today. I mean, we bought a park recently in Austin, Texas, and Austin lot rents are a range of about $550 to $600 a month, and the lot rent is $250, right? That's absolutely crazy. And it's about 150 lots. And if you do the math on that, if we raise the rents $250 and just spread it up to market at 150 lots, that's an enormous windfall, millions and millions of dollars of profit just in adjusting the rents. If you talk to the owner, he has not raised the rents in Austin in 30 years. I mean, we bought that park at an 8 cap based on a $250 rent. I don't remember the total purchase price, but in other words, when we're done, we'll be at like a 16 to 20 cap, something like that. But you know, you look at that, you wonder, how is this guy this crazy? Because there's a park just down the street, and its rents are at 4. It's like, did the guy never even bother to call the neighbor and say, wasn't even curious, like, what are you charging your rent? It's really odd. A lot of these people, what they do is, he was a mom and pop original builder. He built the park back in the 60s. So he paid off the mortgage probably in the 90s, or maybe he did it a little, maybe accelerated and paid it a little early. And then once they have the mortgage paid off, they have more money than they ever dreamed they'd have. And they live very modestly. So they just don't raise the rent anymore. The other problem is they become friends with all the residents over time. So it's really hard to raise the rent when your big buddy is everybody in there. And some of them literally fraternize solely with their park occupants. Yes?
They ask you ahead of time if you're going to raise the rent?
Some of them do. It's really an odd question because I'm not bound to give them the accurate response. So we always play it fast and loose and say, well, we'll probably have to raise them in line with, you know, market forces or some BS answer. We don't say to them, oh yeah, we're going to double them, buddy. They might not even sell to you if you told them that because they'd think, oh all my friends are going to be so mad at me. But it's just a fact of life. Yes.
I'm here looking at owner finance, because I do a lot of that with
Mhm.
residential. A lot that was in Austin, did you get that?
Yes, that deal was owner financed. That's correct. Now, what we do, though, in that property, that will not stay owner financed for long. We'll jack the rent up, and then we'll refi it, right? So that's our normal thing we do is on the seller side, we'll buy it with seller debt. We'll hold it as seller debt until we get the rents raised significantly, maybe 1 or 2 years out, and then we turn right around and put a conduit loan on it.
Why do you do that? Is it cheaper?
Because we get all our money out with with money on top of that. I'll give you an example. Well, I have an example when I show you some of the park examples. We bought a park in Cincinnati, Ohio Metro for, I think, $2.5 million. And we filled 10 lots and we raised the rent and it just appraised at $6 million, right? So I can now refi that park at 70% of $6 million on a conduit loan, so $4.2 million. So we will get all of our money in it plus $1 million or so out of it. Buy more parks, right? So we have, you actually, there are people with the business model that they don't actually have any money in any of their parks. They buy a park, refi it, buy another park, refi it, and they reuse the same capital over and over and over. And it's not a bad business model if you can do it. The only problem with that is, A, has to be a conduit lender. Can't be a regular bank lender because only conduit will allow you cash out. And the other problem is you don't want to get yourself in a position that if the markets change as far as loan to value that you're stuck. We've seen that before. So what some of these guys will do, they're so clever, they'll build these giant empires but they have no capital, right? Which we've seen happen many times. So the guy, he starts off with $100 grand and he grows an empire of like 10 mobile home parks on the same $100 grand. Then the banking market changes and the loan to values change or something else, and his empire is just dandy, but he's undercapitalized. He needs to have $1 million now when all those loans come due, and he doesn't have it. And those are called term defaults. So what happens is the property's perfectly fine. He just can't replace the loan because he doesn't have the capital. We bought some of those from on foreclosures and things like that, and they're painful to watch because the guy did everything perfectly fine. He followed the complete playbook. He never violated his loan. Everything's dandy in the park. He was just not bankable in the modern world. You saw a lot of that from people. I'm sure you guys see it in single family. I don't deal with single family, but probably people who bought single family prior to 2007, zero down, no income doc, and then they come due and the home's worth more than what they paid and everything else, but they personally are the problem. So we see some of that sometimes. Okay, we're the least consolidated sector. If you look at our closest relative, it's self-storage. Self-storage is 3 times more consolidated than we are. So we are, in fact, the least consolidated of all real estate sectors. So what does that mean? It means that there's a lot of room for consolidation, is what it means. Yes?
If you're one of the top 5, who's the other bigger?
They're the bigger guys than us, and the number one bigger is called ELS, and that's owned by Sam Zell. They've got 140,000 lots, but they only have 80,000 mobile home lots. They have 60,000 RV lots.
They have what?
They have 60,000 RV lots and 80,000 mobile home lots. And they're a public REIT. Number 2 position is Sun. They're also a public REIT. They've got about 60-something thousand mobile home lots. They have another 50-something thousand RV lots. Number 3 position is a company called RHP, also known as North Star, and they sold out last year to Brookfield Asset Management, which is a Canadian public REIT, for $2.1 billion. So they are now a Canadian public REIT. In the 4th position is Yes Communities. Yes, we've got 25,000 lots. Yes has probably 38,000 lots. And they sold last year to the country of Singapore. How freaky is that? So Singapore is now the 4th largest owner of mobile home lots in the U.S. They did that through a company called GIC. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of GIC. There's all this weird stuff in the financial world that you have no idea what's going on. But here's this company called GIC, which is the sovereign nation fund of Singapore. Basically, Singapore, unlike America, where we have $10 trillion of debt or 20 trillion, whatever we got, Singapore has a surplus every year. So what do you do with the surplus? Well, every year, they move the surplus into a company called GIC, which the country owns. So effectively, all the residents of Singapore own GIC. They're a little bit of it. And then Singapore buys all this junk, like all the stuff in the U.S. that you think is owned in the U.S. is actually owned by Singapore. Singapore owns stuff all over the world, brand names, giant pieces of real estate, giant companies, cable television channels, and all this junk is owned by Singapore, and now they also are the 4th largest owner of mobile home parks, right? And then in 5th position is us. If you run down the pyramid down to the 100th player only has about 700 lots. So if you look at mobile home parks versus apartments, our top 100 list is 1/10 the size of the apartment top 100. So we're like super duper unconsolidated. So you can literally own like 3 mobile home parks and say, hey, I'm the 100th largest owner in the United States of mobile home parks, which you could never do in apartments. So, but that's the breakdown. Okay. It's one of the few solutions to affordable housing that's out there that's non-subsidized, basically because we can provide a product that's about $500 a month to about $700 a month. Not necessarily in Denver unless you own your home free and clear, in which case, yeah, you could even do it in Denver. But in most of our properties, you can actually still have a brand new home, all bills paid except utilities for under $700 a month. So we're like the only thing that's that cheap.
Under 700 a month, so that's 400 lot rent, 350 mortgage?
No, our US average is 280 lot rent.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, y'all get spoiled in Colorado thinking things are like way up. No, 280 is the national norm. Way lower in the southern states. So if you go down the southeast, I can show you parks all over Mississippi where the rents are 75 a month. And to be honest with you, that's about all it'll bear in Mississippi. So don't run down and start buying in Mississippi because you're going to die, all right? But a lot of the parts of the country we operate in, Oklahoma, 280 is a very normal rent. In fact, a lot of cities, Oklahoma City is just barely even 280. So, but that's our norm. The average mortgage from Clayton on a brand new 3-bedroom, 2-bath is $350. So, no, that's on a 15-year. 15-year. Yeah, it depends on the product you buy at Clayton, and also your credit. So they do some 30-year, but majority now is 15-year.
I read online that you don't love buying parking homes where you buy actual homes for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 because of the perceived risk that's go. Do you really see that, or?
No, wait, I'm missing the front part.
So I read online that you prefer not to buy parks in towns where you can buy housing.
Oh, God, yes, yeah.
$50,000.
Right, I have a slide coming up on that. We try and buy parks in towns that have a median home of 100,000 and up. Mainly because median means it's the middle, so half is under. But we don't want to be competing with regular houses because we're gonna lose that battle. So we know that. So we don't ever want to have it where, hey, you can buy this, house with a garage that's for $38,000, so the mortgage is $200 a month, or you can live in our crappy park and pay $200 a month. I mean, I can beat Class B, Class C apartments, but I can't beat houses. That's not a battle we're going to win. So yeah, that's why we stay out of median homes under. I mean, as it goes under 100, we get worried. When it gets down to 50, we just give up. Yes.
So the financing is, I would assume that the financing would be easier to get for homes in your park compared to them going out and getting the financing on that $50,000 house.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. I mean, the park owner often, if they're looking to buy an existing home, like a new home, the park owner's in the loop somehow. Like in all those programs with Champion and Clayton, we have to basically guarantee the home payment while it's empty. Right. So we take people with very, very poor credit, and they even take people with poor credit because we are effectively almost guaranteeing the loan. Right. So, and additionally, our customers don't have the credit they could ever buy a stick built, nor do they have the down payment to buy a stick built. But the problem is, if you get in those markets where the home prices are really super duper cheap, I won't get any decent customers, right? I'll just get the guys who can't get the stick built for 40 grand. So I'd have no shot at ever upgrading my tenant base. I'll just be stuck with the Taco Bell person with the 300 credit score forever. And we like the parks where basically we're a little better than that. So we like parks where we have people who live in there who are not the bottom of the barrel unemployment, but police officers and bank tellers and things like that.
Would you say that yourself and the other top 4 players in the market have that similar strategy, or is one of the...
No, the top 2 guys want nothing to do with what we do. They do a thing called lifestyle choice. So they're actually appealing to people who are downsizing, but 90% of ELS's homes are bought for cash. So not true in our case. I mean, when we sell homes, virtually none are bought for cash. So they're trying to reach a way more affluent customer. Now, almost all of their parks are coastal, California, Florida. Many are on the ocean or near the ocean. And they take on stick-built homes. So they do what we cannot do. So they will actually, get in a cage fight with Pulte homes and win, and we would never, ever get in that situation. So we only compete with apartments. Yes?
So on the flip side, I don't know a lot about this, but in Colorado Springs, the rent, where my girlfriend was, way higher than 280.
Yeah, of course.
Even over 500. So if there's not a lot of room to increase it, then
That's a turnoff for us. You're exactly correct. Yeah, that's one reason we have not bought a lot of parks in Denver proper, is because if at a $700 lot rent, like where do you go with that? And I don't know Denver that well, and you guys know Denver. I don't know Denver. But, I mean, are your poor people that much richer than my poor people? That's what I don't know. I mean, is your minimum wage that much higher? Because, affordable housing quotient is about $500 in most of America. I mean, is your affordable $1,000? I mean, I don't know. If you're at a 700 lot rate and you throw on the home, you're over $1,000. In Missouri, if you're paying $1,000, you have so many options. It's pathetic. So that's why I don't really understand the 700 lot rent concept. But like in Austin, where we are, you can kind of make sense of the 500 to 600. I think Austin has slightly higher housing prices than you guys have in most of Denver, right? The average apartment's $1,450, and the median home is $280 or something like that, or maybe $280, $290. But in Austin, yeah, they are. It's 2.5%.
they don't have any.
Yeah, it's off. I used to live in Dallas. It's terrible. It's all screwed up system. Right, but when we're buying stuff in Austin, we're still not buying stuff that's at market like at 600, because we're just not sure how much higher you can go with the stuff. We like to buy stuff at that 280 average. That's the safest, and Denver's it's just so high. In Denver proper. Okay. We have the highest yield. We already went over that the other night. Our goal, everyone's goal, is to get 20% cash on cash. So if you can't do 20%, you're a loser in our world. So,
Day one or within 12 months?
well, it depends on what we're buying. In day one, if we get the price we want, if not, we'll model it with our first rent raise. But we have to be at 20% nearly immediately. And that's true of everyone except for the REITs. The REITs play a whole different playbook than regular people. Like ELS only pays a dividend of 3.6%. So all they have to do to buy a property is be able to create 3.6, and they're a REIT, so they have to pay out 80% of their cash flow. So they're not buying it yielding a whole lot better than 3.6. So they're buying stuff all the time at like 4s and 5 caps and financing at like 3.8. Now that is a very narrow game, which to us seemed kind of crazy because interest rates could easily go up significantly enough that they would theoretically go upside down. But again, it's not their money, right? I mean, even though Sam Zell owns ELS, he doesn't own that much stock of ELS, right? I mean, there's one REIT called UMH, the smallest mobile home REIT, and all the officers combined only own, I want to say like 2%. So they're not really making purchases based necessarily on the shareholders' value, more on what they make because they get a management fee off of it. So they each take home $1 million a year, but they don't really have any skin in the game. And if the thing turned upside down, they'd say, "Oh well, how sad," but I'll continue on managing for $1 million a year. So, but other than those group, everyone's looking for 20%. Yes.
So if I'm hearing you right, you tell me if I'm off base on this. It sounds like the way you all operate, the way you guys hunt down your deals, you don't really find you're competing with these other 2 or 3 or 4 reasons.
Yeah, it's more than that. We actually are not. We're not even competing with the public REITs, the private REITs, or even the private equity groups. They all have a completely different buying idea. We try and buy broken stuff and fix it. They want to buy stuff that's already fixed, right? And so our investing philosophy is, let's buy it for a penny on the dollar and then make it worth a dollar. But they prefer to buy it already at the dollar because that's what their investors do, and they typically don't want to put any more capital in. They want to buy it without any deferred maintenance or any capital at all. They're happy. They're almost like bonds, is what it is. And also, it's just like a regular business. You know, it's like any business at some point becomes like a blue chip, and then it's a whole other deal. They're just trying to pay their dividend or whatever. That's their mindset. We sell stuff all the time to REITs. I mean, the weirdest one we did is there was a mobile home park in Arlington, Texas, that had two pieces and separate owners, but they shared infrastructure. So I've never seen a park like it before. You think it's the same park, but it's not. In the middle of the park, you transition from one owner to the other owner. So these people built this together with two separate owners. Kind of weird. So you go one entrance and you go through, and you go at that entrance, and you travel through two owners on that trip. So a REIT owns the one half, but the other half, that mom and pop did a terrible job. It's not nice, it's not clean, they got the vacant lots, the lot rents are low. It's a pigsty compared to the good half. So mom and pop finally decide to sell their half, and they go to the REIT, and the REIT says, no, I don't want that piece of crap. Okay, so we buy it, and we fix it up, and then we sell it for twice what we paid to the REIT. It makes no sense. Any normal person would say, well, that's the dumbest idea of all time. Why didn't the REIT just buy it and clean it up? But that's just not what they do. We've been selling to them for 20 years. They don't do any heavy lifting. They don't even do light lifting. That's just not their business plan. So, but they're perfectly happy to buy from you. So it's like if you bought broken antique furniture or something, right? And then you refinish it and fix it all up, and then the retail furniture store buys it from you like that when you get done. And they can do the same thing themselves in the back of their building. They just don't want to do it. It's kind of weird, but that's how it works. Okay. Lowest default rate, we talked about this the other night. Mobile home parks have very, very low loan default rates. So if you want to make a career of buying nothing but REO mobile home parks, you're going to have a problem because there's not that many REO mobile home parks out there. The ones that there are typically go to auctions.com, and you can buy them at auction. And it's really hard to buy them. We buy them periodically on there, but we don't have a lot of defaults. So it's not like maybe single family where there's just a million foreclosures. Our industry, there's very, very few foreclosures. That's good and bad. It's bad if you want to buy foreclosure. It's good if you get bank loans because banks like the industry because we have so little default. So it's both good and bad. Sam Zell, again, the largest private owner of mobile home parks. He in fact, was what really turned the corner on the industry because back in the mid-'90s, he started buying when Dave and I started buying parks. And back in the mid-'90s, it was a whole other deal. I mean, everyone thought the industry was just for absolute losers and screwballs, and no one would even talk to you, and banks wouldn't talk to you, and City Hall hated you, and it was just embarrassing. Then he started buying, and he gave it some credibility. So he's been definitely an asset to it. And it's also the only real estate sector that Warren Buffett invests in, indirectly at least. I think Buffett only owns one piece of real estate. It's a strip center across from NYU. But he's heavily involved in the mobile home park industry. Now, he doesn't own any parks. He just owns the manufacturing and the financing of the homes. But he believes enough in the industry, he's become a huge advocate of the industry. They have some of the most creative home programs for park owners of anyone in the U.S. So what do mobile home parks look like? So now, Troy, if you can scroll Brandon's first video of those different parks, we're going to show you what mobile home parks look like outside of Colorado, so you can get a rough idea what they look like, maybe dispel some of the myths. Yes?
You said there's 44,000 parks in the United States roughly?
Correct.
Lots.
Nobody knows the answer to that. Nobody knows. We know that 8% of the park, just the park videos. We know that 8% of Americans live in them, but no one has ever figured out how many lots there are in those 44,000.
So if you go an average of 100.
No way average of 100. It's more like average of probably 30 or 40 probably.
So there's no one consolidated website?
Yeah, see, Here's what happened to the industry, all right? What happened was we have a lobby called MHI, the Manufactured Housing Institute. And, oh, hold on, here we go. Well, actually, Troy, hold on. Let me answer his question first for a second here, or I'll forget what I was talking about. At any rate, so we have a national lobby. But when the national lobby began, park owners, which are moms and pops, wouldn't pay any dues, nor would they join, because they just don't do anything with anybody. So the only people who joined were the dealers and the retailers. So the industry only tracked manufacturing data. So they can tell you to the penny how many homes were built, how many were sold from 1950 all the way to current. They don't know anything about mobile home parks at all. They never kept any of the data. When the retail sector died in 2000, then they realized, oh, man, we better start getting some park owner data. But it was too late. They already missed all the historical data. So we got no data. And it's goofy, and a lot of banks can't figure it out. They're like, how can you not have any industry data? We have no industry data. The only industry data we have is like talking to mom and pop. Like, what was your rent in 1960? I don't remember. 25? You know, I can get maybe little data from old timers, but that's about it. It's really majorly messed up. Okay, here is our property in Bloomington, Illinois called Prairie Place. See if this looks like what you think of as mobile home park. This is very much a mobile home park. This is located right on the side of I-55 between St. Louis and Chicago. Yeah, it's crazy. These are mobile homes. These are not like permanently affixed. These are all mobile homes. Yeah, well, we didn't design this thing. The guy that designed it, he wanted it to look more residential than a typical mobile home park, so he oriented all the homes to be sided sideways. You know, and we've filled this thing up now. We have no vacancy at all. The average home in here sells for about 40 or 50 grand.
So do you take care of the grass?
We don't own any. Everything you're seeing in this video, the only thing we have to maintain are the common areas, which are nothing more than that little strip of grass when you first come in, and then a few other little corner parcels that don't have any homes. It's 100% full. Yeah, but they're all concrete. So we don't really do any potholes or anything. But
you have a property like that, looks nice like that, do you put any kind of covenant that says they have to maintain it, right?
well, all of our, even our nastiest property. I'm sorry. Sure. The question is, actually, no, I forgot the question. What was the question again?
When you have a park that looks nice like that, do you put any kind of
All right, covenants on mowing, right. Yeah, we have the same covenants on every property as what you see in this property, but the people never follow them. So then it's a question of how much do you selectively do it. This property, they actually all keep their yards really nice and mow, but some of the other ones you'll see in a minute they don't, and then we have to decide what's allowable and what's not. So what we'll do is when we mow our common areas, if we sense their grass is just ridiculously high, we'll mow it and send them a bill. But we have to kind of manhandle them because these are people that if you wait for them to do things, they never will. So pretty much you have to do it, yes.
Just looking at a concrete pad as you're driving by, is all of them on concrete pad?
All on concrete pad. Now that's true even in some of the ones you'll see in a minute, they're not nearly this nice. Concrete pad is the industry norm.
That the home sits on?
No, not that the home sits on, the parking pad. This thing right here, that's called the parking pad. These homes are all sitting on dirt. So you're thinking these are on slabs? Because we've got this skirting that looks like concrete. They make a skirting product that looks like concrete. It's not. Yeah, everything's fake. Mobile home parks are all about Hollywood set design. That's really all it is. Yes, it's pieces of in other words, it's pieces of concrete that stick on there like skirting, but it's actually resting on dirt. Well, when I say resting on dirt, that's a mobile home owner's too broad a statement. You have dirt, then you have an ABS pad, then you have cinder blocks, and then you have the home. So it's not on dirt. Yes.
For this specific park, how many mobile homes are on?
This property has about 65 lots in it. It's 100% occupied. You know, we got this one really cheap, believe it or not. This was a mom and pop owner, and again, the rents when we bought this were in the 200s, and we are now up in the high 3s to low 4s. So here's Holiday. This is the property that the New York Times lived in for a week. And we own this private lake here in the middle.
Where's Pontoon Beach? I'm from Illinois.
Okay, it's a suburb of St. Louis. It's across the river. Trying to think what else. It's a big Collinsville is right next door. It's up in that little pocket up there.
You own that lake?
We own the lake. Yeah, not the park, just the lake. Don't pull your leg. We own the whole thing. Mom and Pop, to build the lake, what they did is they dammed up the creek and they put in a tube that drains the lake back into the creek on the other side of the little road there. So it maintains its own depth. So it doesn't flood, thank God. If it flooded, it would be pain because some of the homes are not that much higher than it. This property is basically, it's very much of a blue-collar property. I mean, we've got some retirees, but most of the people in here are working families from over in St. Louis. Our lot rent in here, I think, is I want to say it's like $375, I think. So we still have a lot of room. We can increase it. This property, believe it or not, was a REO note sale. And what we did on this deal was the note on this property, as I recall, was $4 or $5 million. So we bought the note for $2 million from the bank when the guy went into default. And then we went to the guy before we bought the note because he threatened, the reason the bank didn't foreclose was he threatened he would pour concrete down all the lines, right? And he was just sincere enough that the bank was worried about it. So they came to us, they went to many people. They wanted you to buy the note. You can only buy the note. They weren't going to foreclose. So we went to the guy, and he told us the same deal. I'm going to pour concrete down the lines. I'm going to light the homes on fire. And we said, well, how about instead we just release you from your recourse? And he said, oh, that'll work. That's all he wanted. He had a full recourse loan with the bank. So when the bank foreclosed, they'd go after him for a judgment of like $3 million. That's all it took. It's so stupid. The bank could have just also forgiven it, but they never even bothered to talk to the guy, right? They just hated him, feared him, and they were just going to like kill each other and burn the whole park to the ground. That's all. He was like just happy as could be. Drop you out of your recourse. Oh, that's fantastic. Yes, no problem. I'll go ahead and give you the plans where all the utilities are and help you any which way you want. God, that's stupid. So we went ahead and closed, and we had his deed in lieu of foreclosure, bought the note, took the park over. And this is a mostly single-wide park. It's got some double wides, but this looks pretty much like all the parks look in our part of Missouri. Yes?
So you had boats and RVs when you first,
Yeah, what we did is we took a little unused piece of land for people. We said, if you want to put your boat and RV in that, you can. Yeah, we don't even charge for it. We just let them stick it over there. Yes?
What's your advice or tip for someone who's just starting out
Mm-hmm.
in terms of buying a park, like in terms of the number of mobile homes?
It's not so much the number of mobile homes. When you're first starting out, you want to buy a park that's broken, that you can fix, right? You want seller financing. And typically a park that's broken, they got to seller finance because the bank won't do it. And then you want to buy one you can really push the rents on, right? So that's kind of it. That's the same thing we're trying to do. Only we're not going to be competing with you because these days we're only buying the really big parks.
What was he doing wrong here with this park? How was it?
Okay, what Mom and Pop was doing wrong on this park is Mom and Pop was an out-of-state owner. Mom and Pop just had no clue what they were freaking doing. They stopped mowing the park. When we showed up, they had mowed the park in 3 years.
So I think what you're talking about, people may not have caught on, a lot of mom and pop started by living there, but then a lot of them either for whatever reason moved.
Right, they were,
And then they will commute once a month, once every 6
And
months, check up on the park. You can imagine that doesn't work.
right. And then they'll have a manager, and the manager goes rogue. See, my first park, Glenhaven, that I bought, only reason I knew the park is I built 2 billboards on it. So I knew the owner because I leased land from him. And all the time, for years when I had those billboards, he would call me up and he'd say, can you do me a favor? I'm like, well, what do you need me to do? Go to the manager's house and knock on the door and ask him why he won't call me back. So I'd go over to the park, I'd knock on the guy's door, nothing would happen. I'd be about to get in my car, suddenly the door would open, the guy would say, what the fuck do you want? And I'd say, Ron wants to know why you won't call him back. Well, I'll call him when I gosh darn want to call him. Slam the door. And I call Ron and I'd say, the manager says he'll call you back. Wasn't very agreeable. And Ron would say, well, you think he was drunk? I'd say, well, I don't know if he was drunk, Ron, but he looked pretty hungover. He was in his underwear and, and that's at work. And Ron was trying to manage through this guy. It wasn't working out.
That was your first car?
No, my first part, Glenhaven, which we're going to come to later on. To give that as an example of managers got bad because Glenhaven was a Californian trying to manage through an alcoholic. Didn't work.
You bought the car?
I bought the part because I thought I could fix it. That was it. Yes.
How are you moving the mom and pop owners that may have killed it themselves and have an emotional attachment? How are you moving them to sale?
Well, I can't move them to sell. What happens is their emotional attachment just got derailed because they just got cancer. Or mom just left them, or mom died, or pop died, and they're ready to go. I could not possibly convince someone who owned this park in its current state, who was friends of all the tenants, that, you got to sell. That's an impossible task. There's a park, I once met with a park owner at a property, right, and this guy, he's like, let me give you a tour of the property. We get in his pickup truck, and everywhere through the property, he gets out of the pickup truck, and people start pouring out of homes like he's a rock star. It's like I'm driving with Justin Bieber. And then people are just like, holy crap, he's here. And they're like running, oh my gosh, Mr. Smith. And I'm like, what's the deal? And then he starts pulling out these giant piles of candy. And he throws them to his minions like a Roman emperor. Right? So that guy could never sell that property. And in the end, we could never come to a price because he can't sell that property. His whole world is going around that property like he's a rock star with all these heads of candy junk, right? And then if you actually talk to him, he's loaned money personally to almost everyone in the entire park. That's how he keeps them loving him, is that he'll loan the money. And they know this, so they go to him and say, I need $300, I gotta get my brakes fixed. No problem. Here's $300, Tom. Get it back to me when you can. It makes no financial sense. If you add how much he's loaned out, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars and never gonna get it back. But he's literally paying to have friends, right? So when you're like 88 years old, it's kind of fun to have everyone just, oh my gosh, you're the greatest thing in the world all day long. That's what he does. So I can't make people sell. Now, if he goes to the doctor though, and they say, oh my gosh, you've got stage 4 cancer, you're gonna be dead in 60 days. It is a game changer. Because now he's like, oh man, I gotta unload this pig because my wife has no idea what to do with it. And that's when we buy stuff. Things like that. Yes. Well, what happens is, we send postcards and all that stuff that most people do. A lot of those deals end up with brokers at pocket listings because they don't want their people to know they're selling because it's embarrassing. So they'll pocket list it. And then we'll call brokers all the time looking for pocket listings and stuff like that. And in fact, that's where that one came from, was a pocket listing, but he really wouldn't sell. Right? Because he wasn't either sick enough. I don't even know what his motivating factor was, but he clearly wasn't there yet. Okay, Troy, we can go to the next one if you want. I don't know if it's possible to fast forward.
How many were there?
This property has about 220 lots, and we have about 200 occupied.
How many parks do you guys mail, say, monthly or every 6 months, would you say?
You mean as far as trying to buy new parks?
Yeah, in terms of direct mail.
Not as many as you would think, because what we typically do is we find one market that we like a lot, and we attack that one niche. And we'll come to it. I'll tell you right now how that happens. Troy, hold. Well, you can go ahead and scroll. I'll tell you while you're watching. I'll tell you. This is our park in Lincoln, Nebraska, called Contempo. This is what a Nebraska park looks like. We have a bunch in Nebraska, and they all pretty much look like this. At any rate, what happens is there are certain economies in America that are hugely attractive for whatever reason. And so we get really turned on to it because of the way the employment works. Because the 3 kinds of employment we like healthcare, education, and government. Because you cannot recession those. They're stuck. And for example, that's one reason we like St. Louis. St. Louis economy, if you lay it out like top 10 employers of St. Louis, there are so many gigantic regional hospitals in St. Louis. You've got Barnes, which is ranked 3rd in the US. And then you've got more colleges in St. Louis than any city in the United States. And then you've got a ton of government jobs. Federal Reserve Bank is there. So St. Louis is bulletproof. It's like you cannot have a St. Louis recession. It's nearly impossible. So as we've bought more parks, they've done incredibly well there. We're all over St. Louis. So we contact owners in St. Louis all the time. But we're not nearly as psyched in Kansas City, right? So we don't do nearly as much in Kansas City because Kansas City isn't as economically strong as St. Louis, in our opinion. So when we find little niche markets, some of them are really weird little niche markets, like, oh gosh, there's one market we're in that is the orthopedic capital of America. They make all the orthopedic limbs and all this stuff. I'm blanking on the name of it. And we own 2 parks there now. And we talk to those people all the time because it's an awesome economy. It's like so stable. But when we see little niches like that, then we'll start direct mailing and stuff. But we don't do like just shotgun blast, let's direct mail the whole state of Nebraska. It's expensive and it'd be hugely wasteful. But again, this park here in Contempo, since we bought this property in 2 years, we have filled 100 lots in here, right? And this year, we're hoping to fill the final lot. So if we get done, we will have filled 160 lots on this property. It's our number 1 selling property right now. In Lincoln, Nebraska, which is real weird.
I grew up in Lincoln. What part of Lincoln was it?
Oh, gosh, if I had to memorize all of that stuff on my properties, I'd go insane. I'm sure you've seen this property. It's one of the nicer properties in Lincoln.
So you build it because they were empty?
Yeah, what happens a lot of times, our mom and pop have got a great product, but they won't tap into it because they don't like the homes. They're either afraid of them or they don't want to have to show them. And so they'll deliberately let the lots lay empty, even though they have people every day coming in wanting to buy a home or rent a home there. We did another deal just like this called Sugar Creek, maybe one of Troy's videos here even, and it was crazy because the guy's 100% occupied of every lot that has a home on it, and he's getting a decent rent. And he tells us on the front end, I could fill all the other vacant lots in here, but I just don't want to jack with it. And then we're like, why don't you want to jack with it? I don't need the money. Like, okay. And he goes, and it's a pain. You know how homes are. When you build them, you have to show them and junk. I don't want to come in on Saturday. And okay. And so we basically, it was a good deal for both parties. We bought it as a fair price to him with the expectation of filling the lots. Yes?
You're saying it's selling the lots or selling the property?
Well, when we say sale, because our industry, we all, like our guy it's a sales department, but we're mostly renting. We're obviously always renting the land, and the homes, we either sell them or we rent them. But we throw all that into words sales.
Do you speculate on new homes on your lots?
Yes, oh yeah, we bring in, we're the largest buyer of new homes in the U.S.
You buy it?
Yes, from the Wakarusa plant in Elkhart, Indiana. We're the Wakarusa's largest single customer. So we buy a ton of homes from, not from Buffett himself, but from.
Is it a traditional wholesale?
Yeah, the way it works is the program is called the Cash Pro, and this is Friendly Village in Arlington. This is what a typical Dallas-Fort Worth park looks like. And you probably notice it's not as nice as what you saw earlier. And part of the reason is it's cultural. As you go around America, people live differently in different states. So I'm not being judgmental one way or the other, but people in Texas do not keep their property up like they do in Nebraska or in Missouri. And in fact, if you go to the very farthest north, you will never find anyone who takes as good care of the property as Minnesota and Wisconsin. It's totally cultural. Yeah. And like we go to our parks in Wisconsin, which are so immaculate, and we're like, how could we train Oklahomans to do this? And there's no way. It's in their blood. When you go to a mobile home park in the north on a weekend, on a Saturday, and I'm talking fairly early, like if I show up at the park at 9 in the morning, the guy is always out washing the car. His wife is always out there cleaning something. She's like sweeping the porch, cleaning the rug, planting flowers. That's just what they do. And if I go down into Texas on a Saturday at 9, the guys are completely hungover from being drunk, beer cans everywhere. Wife's nowhere to be seen. She's probably also in there asleep. It's just a different way they live their life. And you drive through parks in Wisconsin. We've driven with banks, and they're like, God, this is, why is this so much nicer than the ones we saw earlier with you down in the other? And I'm like, I mean, you have to ask the people in here because we don't own the homes. I don't know why they can't live as nicely, but they just don't. Nobody knows the answer to that question. They claim to read articles. They claim it's their Scandinavian heritage. That apparently Scandinavian people just kind of like clean their stuff all the time. But I don't know. But if we could just inject some of that Wisconsin stuff in our southern people, it'd be really great. But hadn't worked. Yes?
The company you buy most of your property, your houses
Is Clayton Homes.
from, like,
Clayton Homes. Clayton has several divisions. They have a division called True, TRU, and their mandate is to build the cheapest home in America. And that's what they do. And it's the cheapest. And it's not necessarily the nicest, but it meets all the federal guidelines by HUD. And they can bring you a 3-bedroom, 2-bath for 19 grand, completely knocked out. In fact, I have a video, not of a True, but of, we have. But see, the problem is I got to match that to my customer base. See, we got a rude awakening because I started in Texas and Dave started in Colorado. So when we started buying parks in Wisconsin, we were thinking people are the same. So the first homes we brought into Wisconsin were like true quality homes. Couldn't give them away. We'd ask the manager, what's the problem? She'd say, oh, well, everyone wants the home. I think, great. But your carpet's crappy. It's not thick and plush. And they started picking our homes apart. And your cabinets aren't nice. And we're like, yeah, but that'd be like 10 grand more. Well, so we started shipping more expensive homes, and they sold like crazy. We have homes up there that we pay from the factory invoice like 50 grand. And those are the first ones that sell because the people are so much pickier.
so your factory invoice to you is 50.
Right, and we sell them at our invoice. We don't put any markup in our homes. So if it's 50, we sell for 50 on the new homes. All right, but the key is you got to match it to your customer base. The worst thing you can do, I tell people all the time, is don't go buy with no prior experience, just order 10 homes from the factory because you have no idea what customers want till you actually start getting in there and selling them. So just order like a home, or if they have a minimum order of like 2 homes, do 2 homes and try that out because it's gonna totally change your perception when you start selling because you're gonna find people in different states can be extremely picky. Just the things they want are different. People they're very different all over America. I don't know if you guys, I read all the time like war biographies and business biographies. If you read like why the Japanese did not do well with their Navy as well as the US, one problem was that the Japanese commanders would think through the battle, and they would go 100% convinced that to put like a certain bomb on the planes, but the American commanders knew they had no idea what would happen, so they would put different bombs on the planes. So the Japanese guy might only put the bomb that would like blow up the ship, and the American commander would have a third of them would blow the ship up, but a third was like incendiary, would just light the ship on fire, so that something would happen. So in the battles, the American guy would do some damage, even if it didn't sink it, but the Japanese were like all or nothing. It's like Pearl Harbor would be a good Japanese battle. They like thought through it, right? But we find the same thing on the homes. Like you would never want to do a kind of a Japanese attack and just like in Contempo order 100 homes because they have no idea what people want.
Kamikaze.
Yeah, right. Because if you mistimed it, you're screwed. I'm sorry. Let me one of the issues real fast because we only have a few more to go. This is a park we have called Edison Estates in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. What you find in Wisconsin again is that people take really good care of their property, and also you have really great landscaping in Wisconsin because they get so much moisture up there throughout the winter, like feet and feet of snow, that everything's just really green. There's a lot of green. It's a real happy looking place. Okay, toward the looking board. Go to the next one. Hurry before I lose people.
New Mexico?
We do. We have 4 properties in New Mexico. New Mexico, you got to be really careful on what you're doing because to have affordable housing, you have to have expensive housing, and all of New Mexico is not Santa Fe. So you got to be in areas that the houses are high. Okay, this is a park we have in Colorado. I told them to put some Colorado on here. This is in Grand Junction. Now, this does not look as nice as the ones you saw earlier. I think we would all agree, right? It just doesn't look as nice. Colorado parks just don't look as nice as in other states. Part of it is the fact you guys get no rain here, right? So it's more of a desert-looking thing going on, which we don't exactly know how to mow or deal with because we're really used to areas that are more all about the mowing. Here it's more about just like the naturescape. But the key item in Colorado, what makes the park business work is your other home prices are so high that there's a huge demand for this stuff. Oh gosh, lot rent in Grand Junction. I think this park lots are in the 400s. I think it's nothing like Denver. We don't have any. We don't even try and have any. We typically day one tear the pools down, shut the clubhouses down. We don't do it to be mean, but because those things are all half a century old, and they're just lousy. And every city has a nicer one that's public these days. Why would you want our junk? I mean, our typical pool, like we'll go to mom and pop and tour the property, and here's our pool, and right off the bat, you know there's a problem because the pool is slightly lime green, just right off the bat, and you're like, how are you doing the pool? Oh, I throw some chlorine in there occasionally, and you look at the pool, and commercial pools today have to have 2 drains, right? Because they had that case where the kid stuck on the drain and drowned. They don't have any of the legal stuff at all, like none, nothing. So basically, every pool we buy is illegal. So the other question is, do you put $50,000 in it and legalize it, or you just tear it down? And then what you do is you look at well, how many people use this pool? And the national stat, even in apartments, is like 10%. Like people in apartments say, oh, look at the pool. I'm going to go sit out there sometime. They never go out there. So it doesn't make any economic sense for us in a 100-space park. So there's only 10 households that would use the pool. And they're only going to use it a couple times. It makes no sense to put $50,000 in. For that same $50,000, I could put in a nicer sign, nicer entry, all kinds of junk. It doesn't, just from a quality of life perspective. So it's not to be mean, it's just that the times have marched on and nobody wants our nasty stuff. In a lot of towns today, the city pool isn't like when I was growing up. Today's city pool is like a water park. It's got slides and hot dog stands and junk. Who wants to go to our old nasty green pool? And then our clubhouse, the only reason we have clubhouses in parks is because the early homes are 8 feet wide. They're so small you couldn't live in there without going insane. So you had to have a place to go hang out through the day. You only went to your mobile home to sleep. But now the mobile homes are much larger. You can sit in your mobile home. You can read a book in there. You don't want to go to a clubhouse. No one wants to do that. We once tested a clubhouse. We thought, well, let's see. We bought a park, had a big old brick, 3,000 square foot clubhouse. We're like, well, let's see how many people use this stupid thing. So we sent around a flyer. You want to use the clubhouse? Give us a call. Put up a $200 deposit. Give it right back to you when you're done. And how many think we booked in that 1 year of engagements for cards or how many people used our clubhouse, do you think? One person. 12 months, one person. So it was costing us $800 a month to heat and cool that. So we were spending $10,000 for that person's one party. Makes absolutely no economic sense. So we just stopped it, and anyone else who ever called about the clubhouse were like, you know what, we're not renting it out anymore, but here's the name and number of 9 other really nice ones that are very cheap. Just call them up. In fact, we give our residents today a little amenity book, and it tells them every amenity in the entire town, every social program in the entire town. It's got every pool, gym, you name it, and they never even ask us anymore about our amenities. Do they want to go to the pool? They just go through that deal. That's the future. The world has just changed a whole lot since 1950. This is a park we have in Eagle, Nebraska. And again, as you can see, it's not nice. I told her to throw in some of our nastier stuff in here too. And Eagle's one of the ugliest parks we own. Part of the problem in Eagle is that the people just live awfully, and I can't fix that. Our tenant base in Eagle is extremely downscale blue collar, and there's nothing I can do about that. So part of what you learn in the park business, since I'm renting land, I don't really have any control over what people do with their homes or how they live. Yes?
What's your stats on your average length of residency?
We don't have the actual stats, but it has been calculated by Clayton, and they came up with 7 years. 7 years is the normal lifespan of a resident. Now that's average. Some go all the way till death, right? The house stays, right, but the average resident will live in that home for 7 years.
So when you sell a dealer invoice to a resident, a new house, what happens if they trash it?
Okay, the homes that we bring in and sell are on 10-year notes. So 7 years in, we're still fine because we pay down enough. If we were doing 15 or 30 year, we would die. Because 10 years, 7 years in on a 30, we wouldn't even pay any of it off.
What's your interest rate on your note?
Well, it's been in different stages. The cash program at Clayton, the park owner could buy it down to 5% by tithing $100 a month of lot rent for the first 5 years, right? No one wanted to do that. So the new one is you don't tithe, and the interest rate it's around 10%. It's like 8 to 10%. It's 8 to 10% from Clayton, yes.
Front plate.
Yes.
So plate's financing to the lot owner.
Well, they're financing to the end customer, but because we've agreed to cover the note payment in between customers, that's how they got it down to 8%. If we didn't do that, it would be up in the teens.
And it's all, you're strictly doing fixed or any variable or?
Oh gosh, no, I don't know from memory because it's not our note. I don't know what they're doing with the customers right now.
They don't need to be variable, 'cause they're community.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're fixed. Troy, go ahead and hit. Oh, good. Here we go. Here's La Junta. This is a really ugly park. But have y'all ever been to La Junta? It's a really ugly town. So we mirror the town. I mean, I tried to go eat dinner with my wife there. I am driving through parks. I'm in La Junta. It's getting to be like 6 o'clock, and I'm like, where do we go? Well, there's only basically 2 restaurants. There's a Mexican restaurant, and there's a thing called like the slobbering pig or something, right? So I'm like, let's go Mexican. So I go to Yelp, and every single one is, do not eat here, food poisoning. Do not eat here, I got sick. Do not eat here, food poisoning. So we had to go to like the slobbering pig. And I'm just thinking, this town is awful. It's an okay mobile home market because there's like not a lot of affordable housing, but it's just an ugly place.
Bought it off auction.com.
No, we bought it from a mom and pop, but it's not one of our favorite parks. It's okay. Like it's never on any of my sheets of problems. Like everyone pays their rent, but it's just ugly when you go there. I'm used to Missouri looking parks, and I go in there. It aesthetically blows my brain. Troy, go hit the next one too if you want.
RV right over there.
Yeah, we allow RVs. If the city allows them, we allow them. Some people they retire and live in RVs over mobile homes. I probably would, to be honest with you. If I had to live in a mobile home park, I'd be the guy in the RV probably. Better built, and just you don't have the stigma in an RV that you have in a mobile home.
How often do you go? You have so many.
Well, what I do, which I should probably pull my iPad out of the car and show you, the way we work it, when you get up, I was totally hands-on all my early parks. I would either office in them or spend all my time in them. And then, as we've gotten larger, you can't do that. So what we do today, all park owners do this, is we do HD videos, like just what you see here. We do a video like this of every park, and then I watch all those. So it's like I drive all 280 parks every quarter. And the only reason we don't do them every month anymore is it takes me so long to drive them every quarter watching the films. And then when I watch the film, I critique the film and I grade it like a teacher. And then we send that back to the manager, tell them what they need to fix. That's how we do it today. Even people with little portfolios of like 10 properties, that's what everyone's doing these days. Now, I know some people that do the videos weekly. I think that's probably overkill. I think monthly is a really good idea. The only reason we do ours quarterly is we're too big to do a monthly. If I had to do a monthly, that's all I could pretty much do is just watch videos.
So you pay somebody to make a video.
No. You have your manager. What you do is you get a thing called the Polaroid Cube, right? Don't get the GoPro. I know everyone's like, oh, GoPro, it's so cool. GoPro's got 3 buttons, but the Cube has only 1 button. And the Cube does not even have a viewfinder in it. It's just a little square thing with a little lens and 1 button. You buy a suction cup mount. So you put that thing in an all-weather cover in a little suction cup, and you put it on the top of your car, not on the hood, on the top of your car, right above where you are. You have them push the button, which they typically are smart enough to do. You have them drive the entire property. Not once you get in, you start it a ways back so you can see your entrance and stuff. And then do not have them download it. Have them take the chip out, push the button to get the chip out. They mail you the chip, and they have a second chip. Put that chip back in the camera. You download that chip, and you mail the chip back to them, and they swap out. And if you do that, you can get a video like that of every property. These were shot by managers. I didn't shoot any of these. They're all shot by managers. You can't go wrong with them. I mean, The Cube stabilizes to some degree. What we like about the Cube is it also doesn't distort the image like the GoPro. I know they have some new GoPros that don't do as much distortion, but the Cube is just so simple. People on the GoPro, we used to send people GoPros and they would push the wrong button. So they would send us like just a still frame, and we realized we were asking too much for them to figure out which button to push, and also to have them download was a nightmare. So we've eliminated the middleman. Anyone can push a button and anyone can take a chip out. But that's how we view them today. We do all off these HDs. Yes.
Concerned about competing with Google or anything?
Compete with Google? No, we're not competing with Google. Yes.
So, looks like sometimes you have either maybe dirt roads and sometimes
Yes.
concrete or,
Our norm is asphalt.
okay.
On our Colorado parks, the norm is gravel. Yeah. So, and that's because in Colorado, most of the parks are gravel. Same in New Mexico. So it's a cultural thing. I don't know why. I don't know why they're
I mean, if it is
gravel.
gravel and you ever convert them to asphalt?
No, typically not, because culturally it fits in. Most of these roads are like half a century old. That's what the people are used to, and it kind of fits in with the marketplace. The problem is when you go to get lending, right? Because a New York lender who sees a Colorado park in gravel, he's used to seeing paved. So that's when you always get this problem. And then they're like, I don't know if I want to do this loan, man. These are gravel. And you're like, everything's gravel here. So that's the only time you would probably think, should I go ahead and change it up and put down asphalt? But paving is very expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars of cost. The tenants could care less. So do you really want to pour all that in for that bank, or maybe just get a different bank? See, that's what we found. Yes.
Do you own anything in Tennessee?
We own nothing in Tennessee. Yeah, we stay clear of the Southeast, and for good reasons. We'll go over that in a minute. I think Troy wanted to take a break, is why Troy's giving me the break look. So yes, break time.